Nigeria's House of Representatives demands suspension of new cash withdrawal limit, summons CBN governor. INEC set to release a shocking report on PVCs found buried. Nigerian army denies report of illegal mass abortion program on Boko Haram victims. Also tonight on Politics HQ, South African government apologizes for prolonged blackouts. Ghana blocks 8 million unregistered mobile lines. I'm Sulaiman Ayalede. Tonight on Politics HQ, Funsho Doherty, African Democratic Congress governorship candidate Lagos State, joins me to speak about his ambition here in the state. Stay with us. As Nigeria prepares for one of its most important elections, aside from the presidential polls, the governorship seats are also being keenly contested. In Lagos State, Nigeria's southwest region, at least 16 candidates are jostling for the state's top job. Lagos politics is perhaps one of the most interesting because the ruling All Progressives Congress has had an unbeaten 16-year run. Now, this almost two-decade-long control of the country's commercial hub has left imprints of political dominance, which other parties now seek to challenge at the upcoming polls. One of those eyeing that seat is Funsho Doherty. He's the candidate of the ADC in Lagos State. He joins me tonight. Good to see you, and thanks for your time.
Thank you, Suleiman, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure having you. 16 candidates, and we see you are one of the notable names, running for this election. Now, first, let's start by looking at your party, ADC. Speak to us about ADC and perhaps why Lagosians should be looking towards that political party.
Thank you. Well, ADC is actually not a new party. ADC has been in existence since 2006, and it's a national party. We are not regional, and we have structures in all the states of the Federation. It is one of the platforms that is not one of the two platforms that Nigerians are most familiar with, the APC and the PDP. And part of the reason why I individually chose the ADC as the platform to approach the electorate is because we believe that is a platform that provides the foundation for us to approach the people, seek their mandate in a way that ensures that when we get that mandate, when the people elect us, we will have the free hand and the agency to act in the interest of the people. And I think ADC is one of the platforms that allows us to do that. It's a well-established party. It has structures across the local governments in Lagos State. And we believe that as people look towards 2023 and think about which platforms are offering them the candidates that they believe in, because one of the things that I think characterizes 2023 is the fact that people, yes, they are concerned about the parties, but they are also very concerned about the candidates. And so people are looking much more to candidates in 2023, I think, than just the parties. And as you know, one of the problems that historically we've had in politics in Nigeria is the primaries process and the process of emerging through the primaries. And very often, emerging through the primaries in one of the two mainstream political parties comes with a certain baggage that means that when you get there, often your hands are tied. And so the people this time are looking and saying, which candidates do we like? Which candidates do we trust? Which candidates do we believe will act in our interest? And regardless of political party, let us look at those candidates and see how we support them.
So in other words, you're talking about vested interests, and also you're looking at what Lagosians is saying, time to untie hands of those, with running the affairs of the state. Now let's now talk about you as a person, the man who's coming to untie, the dividends of Lagosians, if I should put it that way. Funsho Doherty. You've been there in the private sector, you've done well for yourself, and now you're coming into politics. Is it a terrain, different from your private life?
So, I mean, yes, the public sector is different from the private sector. But as you probably also well know, Suleiman, it's the case in democracies across the world that the transition from a successful private sector career to continue to contribute in the public sector is not an unusual one for people who have achieved success in the private sector to seek to make their contributions also in the public sector. We see it across the globe, especially in the more advanced democracies that we model ourselves along. So there's that. Now, yes, there are differences between the public sector and the private sector, but at the end of the day, it's about leadership. And it's about able to bring those leadership skills, the character, the competence, and the track record into positions of office and ensure that you are in a position where the sacred trust that you've been given in that mandate and that seat, whether it's a governorship seat, whether it's a presidential seat, you exercise it judiciously for the benefit of the people, not in a self-interested way, with integrity, bringing character, competence, and leadership capacity to that office. And so whether you're in the private sector or in the public sector, those capacities, those skills, those traits of leadership are what is needed at the most senior levels and is what is actually been often lacking in the public space. And that's why some of us have made the decision to make that transition, to bring what we believe is the character, the capacity, the competence, and the track record that we've demonstrated and offer it to the people for service in the public sector.
When you travel across cities around the continent, Cairo, Tunis, Johannesburg, Cape Town, and definitely you'll be talking about Lagos. Are there things missing in Lagos State, for instance, that has made you, throw your heart in the ring?
So Lagos State is, as you know, a mega city in terms of population. Lagos has between 20 and 30 million people. If you look across other states in Nigeria, you will also find that Lagos State is one of the most endowed, right? And the resources that are available to Lagos State are actually far more than many and most other states, in fact, all other states in Nigeria. We believe that given the advantages that Lagos enjoys, given the vast resources that are available to Lagos State, the state has been managed far below its potential.
Far below? Far
below its potential. There's a ranking that the Economist magazine does, it's the Economist Intelligence Unit, of cities across the globe. And it ranks 172 cities. In its latest ranking in 2022, Lagos was ranked 171 out of 172, which is one from the bottom. And what are the criteria that it judges in reaching this ranking? Stability, infrastructure, education, health, culture, and environment. So it's a fairly comprehensive report card. So we believe that given the vast resources that Lagos has enjoyed and has deployed over each of the past, and you said 16 years, more like 23 years actually, of this administration from 1999, it's essentially been under one governing group. Given the vast resources that have been deployed year in, year out in this state, we believe that a whole lot more could have been done to deliver quality of life, dignity, and respect to the citizens of this state. And we believe that that is the core vision for our agenda, to deliver this. And we have an agenda for doing that.
No doubt, I'll come back so that we can expatiate and also speak to your agenda. But yeah, we'll call for this, and when we come back, we'll be looking at Funsho Doherty's agenda for Lagos, and but not without also digging deep to looking at some of the key things he thinks are wrong in Lagos State.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the New Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on New Central's social media platforms. New Central, Africa First.
Well, if you just joined us, you're welcome. You're watching Politics HQ here on News Central Television, broadcasting live to 54 African countries and beyond. And we've been looking at, the countdown to Nigeria's big election, presidential, governorship, and National Assembly elections. And today our guest is Funsho Doherty. He's the Lagos State candidate of the African Democratic Congress. And he's speaking to us why he's running for governor of Lagos State. Yes, it's soothing to know that you have a manifesto, because we've spoken to some people. It took time for some of them to come up with their manifestos, and Lagosians will be excited to see the manifesto of the ADC. But let's talk about some of those key things you have so identified that also affect the economy of Lagos, the education of Lagos, and specifically, there's another thing that a lot of people are leaving out. It has to do with the very seniors, the senior citizens of the state, which I know, that's one area of forte. You've actually, in the private sector, looked into people's pension and a whole lot. Now, but what stands out for you when you look at Lagos? You grew up in Lagos.
Yeah, I grew up in Lagos.
So you should draw a comparison between Lagos of, your growing up and Lagos of now.
Yeah. So, yes, you're right. I grew up in Lagos, born, raised, schooled in Lagos up to university level. And, Lagos today, I would say, is a much more chaotic society. So, yes, we may not have had many of the modern trappings of technology and so on then. But just in terms of the general disorder in the environment, I would say it's significantly more today. But related to your question, which is what are the issues that we see? I will tell you, I've been across the local governments, and I've sat with people in town halls, listening to them to understand what their issues are, where the shoe pinches. The issues are remarkably similar from local government to local government, the things that people complain about in Lagos. People are concerned about cost of living. People are concerned about transport and traffic. People are concerned about educational systems. The fact that they're not so comfortable sending their children to public schools, and they have to look for resources to send them to private schools, even when they can't afford it. People are concerned about health systems. They don't trust the public health systems, and they would rather go to either private providers or even traditional practitioners. People have complained endlessly about the Agbero problem in Lagos. It's a remarkably consistent complaint that people have.
And one would have thought that Lagosians are unbothered about the issue of Agbero.
Well, I don't know. Everywhere I've gone, I've heard about it. And, it's across, and it's not just, it's across the state, and it's across the socioeconomic spectrum. For the people in the higher socioeconomic spectrum, it is like an inconvenience. The fact that they're driving down the Lekki Road and people are running across the street and all of that. But for the vast majority of the people, the working class people of Lagos State, it is actually an existential issue for them. Because remember that transport expenditure is a large part of the cost of living of many of them. So these activities, these unconstrained activities, uncurbed activities of these what I call agents of disorder on the streets of Lagos, is actually eating deep into the pockets of the average citizen. If you talk to an average commercial driver, he will tell you that the amount of money that they pay to these agents on a daily basis is in the thousands of naira. Over this, over that, over chairman, over loading, over whatever. So these things ultimately comes out of somebody's pocket, and it's the people who are riding the buses that are bearing the brunt of those things. So there are a range of issues, And I think central and underlying all of these issues is one central theme. And that is that the approach to managing the state has resulted not in a spreading of the resources of the state for the generality of the people to create a broad-based, prosperous society. What has resulted from a couple of decades of this management essentially is a concentration of wealth in a narrow section of society, and the rest of the state essentially is largely worse off. And we think that that inequality is best addressed, and indeed can only be addressed, when you have leadership in the state that acts with that as a primary goal to ensure that the state delivers broad-based prosperity across the state, that the resources of the state are deployed for the benefit of the many rather than the few, and that the actions of government are aligned with the interests of the people, and you remove self-interest and self-dealing from government activity. And we have a whole program around that, which I can talk more about.
No, I want you to expatiate more, but first, you know, speaking of transportation, which is very tied to the traffic situation, and I'm excited to hear that you've gone around Lagos, you've gone around local government, and the people are saying to you that these are some of their concerns. And for transportation, you said Lagos is blessed. Lagos also has, you know, the water transportation, and of course, there's also the rail lines. So what are the plans you think your government, should you get elected, can do to fix in the traffic situation in today's Lagos, plus also taking charge to a large extent the leakages that go into private hands in the name of Agbero?
Yes. So good question. It's a robust question. There are many parts to it, but I think there are three things I want to talk about here. First is that we need to expand the range of options that is available to the citizens. Lagos, as you've noted and as I've said repeatedly, is blessed in that we have the waterways, we're a coastal city, and we have the lagoon which runs through the state. So we can do more with our waterways, because what's happening is that there's excessive focus on the road infrastructure and on vehicular traffic on the roads, at the expense of these other options, water and rail. Take water, for example. What we can do is to identify a few key routes and ensure that there are robust vessels that are plying those routes, that people feel comfortable taking, and that can become a mainstream option to decongest those key routes from vehicular traffic. And much more can be done, and it doesn't have to take a very long time to do that. That can actually you can actually have quick wins there. And then you combine it with first and last mile options that enable people to access those waterways, both going to and coming from work. The other option, of course, that needs to be looked at is the rail option. And as you noted, there's been a project that's been underway in that area for almost 15 years, and it's not delivered. And it's just one axis of travel. It is not like a rail system as such.
You're talking about the monorail?
I'm talking about the blue line that's been under construction for almost 15 years. We have to understand why. There's no transparency, there's no accountability around it. Why is it taking so long? Who was it awarded to? Under what terms was it awarded? What was the performance? What actions have been taken? Why has it not been delivered? Other states, cities have delivered much more ambitious programs in much shorter period of time. So that's one of the things that we will share information on that with the people when we are elected, by the way, and we will deliver a rail option. So when you now have these other options, rail, water, then you then look at the road infrastructure. And first of all, it will reduce the burden on the roads. But importantly, on the roads, you also have to address, and this is the last bit I'll talk about on the transportation. You also have to address the general chaos that exists on the roads. Because if you don't address the disorder and disorderliness and the fact that people behave as a law unto themselves on the roads, and the activities of agberos and touts on the roads, the infrastructure, the road infrastructure will never be enough. Even if you build more, if people are not organized on the roads, if there's no efficient enforcement on the roads, given the population of Lagos, the infrastructure will never be enough. And so central to fixing the problem of traffic, once you've provided other options, you have to deal with the chaos and disorder on the roads. And that means dealing with the agbero problem. Now, it is important for people to realize that the agbero problem cannot be solved, is not likely to be solved by the present ruling party. And the reason for that...
Oh, good. I was going to ask you the reason.
Yes, so the reason for that is that, and we're in political season now, one of the things that you will find, if you go back and you look at history in each election cycle, is that the present ruling party finds a lot of support from a block vote of people in this category, these agberos and union officials. And so they are part of the political machinery that delivers power to the ruling party. And so in a way, the government is beholden to them and has its hand tied behind its back in efforts to curb them. In fact, the political will to curb them is not likely to be there. Right? So they're likely to pander a bit to those interests. We are saying to the people that you need to break that, and you are the one that has the power to break that. Because if you choose the leaders that you want and you elect them, then they will be responsible and accountable to you and will not be protecting the interests of anybody, whether they're agberos or otherwise. They will have the mandate of the people and they will act in the interest of the people. So all of these issues, you can see how they are variously linked. And it is the actions of government, the actions of those in the seats of authority, the degree to which they understand that that seat is a public trust and that they are acting in the public interest, that underlies all of these issues.
Just the last one on the issue of transportation, because I'm looking at the system that your party, in this case you, seek to go against.
Yes.
We're talking about a system that if these are a part of the army of the establishment, keep in mind that they also would want to fight back.
Sure.
So, especially to ensure that you don't get the ballot,
Sure.
you don't get the seat.
Yeah.
So, have you considered that aspect as you go into the election next year?
Yes, we have. And, the truth of the matter is that nobody gives up those things willingly, right? If you look at societies across the world, privileged groups generally do not surrender those privileges, right? And you may not think of agberos as privileged groups, but they are within a structure that is a privileged group. And so, but what we're saying is that we're not expecting them to give it up, and we're not expecting them not to resist it. But we're saying that the will of the people is supreme. The will of the people is supreme. For every agbero, think about how many passengers there are, right? So in each bus, maybe there are 2 or 3 agberos harassing a bus or harassing 10 buses. Think about how many passengers are in those buses bearing the impact of those activities, right? So the vast majority, actually, of Lagosians are victims of this.
Okay,
so we are saying that, especially in 2023, that it is the people that will rise up in their own interest.
Now let's talk about education. In your opening, I could see, the glow on your face when you spoke about being educated here in Lagos. And Just recently, I was at an alumni, of the University of Benin, and the question was posed: how many of you can have your children back to where you graduated from? Now, Lagos State education is top priority for anyone who's coming in as a government. What are the exciting things you see in the education sector with the present administration?
What are the exciting things I see, or what are the exciting things we think we need to bring?
Because you can't say they haven't actually done anything.
No, so there's no, we're not saying that they have not done anything. They've certainly done something. But the yardstick of measurement is not whether you've done something or not. It is what have you done with the resources that you have at your disposal, and what have you done relative to what others who may have similar resources have done. And how can you compare yourself with other cities of similar resources across the world? And we're saying that by that yardstick, a lot more could have been done than has been done. Secondly, if we measure it by the quality of the output and the quality of the outcomes, right? And what the people's judgment about the quality is, not just what we say, but what the people, when the people that have the means vote away from that system, it's a pretty good, even people that don't have the means vote away from that system to the extent that they can. It tells you a lot. So we're saying that, and one of the elements of our agenda is educational health systems that people trust, that the people trust. So it's important that the people trust the system. And to do that, you have to deliver quality. So what are the things that we're talking about? First of all, you have to address teacher quality. Now, it is true that we have many good teachers in the Lagos State system, very many. But it is equally true that there are some in that system that should not be there, right? And you have to have a mechanism for addressing teacher quality issues, because you cannot give what you don't have, right? And so the outcome is a function of that. The curriculum itself needs to be continually reviewed to ensure that it is relevant to the needs of the modern world, but also relevant to a society like Lagos, which is a commercial city, which continues to need skilled workers, not just office workers, but skilled workers. Vocational training is an important pillar which must be expanded, and we have an agenda to expand that. And it is central, because for Lagos to actually be sustainable, you have to be equipping people with the skills to deliver a productive society and to enable the benefits or advantages that Lagos has to be further enhanced. So what do I mean? Lagos is, as you know, a coastal city with a large population by the coast, right? A commercial center. It should actually be, if things are working and we have infrastructure, etc., it should actually be a very attractive destination for people to establish businesses, just given these things I've spoken about. You have a large market right by a port, a large population, workforce. So one of the things that we do to make ourselves more attractive for the siting of businesses here, and we have a different program for small businesses, but even if you take the larger businesses, industry, is you need to ensure that you are equipping the population, essentially young people, because we have a young population, with the skills, the technical skills, to make them an investment-ready, attractive workforce. So if somebody knows that I can establish a factory here, and I have skilled workers, and it doesn't mean that they have to have university degrees or PhDs, but they need to be skilled workers, and we can deliver those skills. We then create an attractive platform that then creates jobs, wealth, that is broad-based, because each of these has a multiplier effect. Then those people who have acquired vocational skills in our educational system can also now become the bedrock of those that establish small businesses, employing 2, 3, 4 people, which in a commercial city like Lagos, as you know, or cities like Lagos all over the world, is where a large number of the people are employed in small businesses. Government cannot employ all of those people, but we can create the conditions that enable those people to be productive and to then employ others.
And it looks to me, speaking of education, the way you have highlighted it, ultimately will also lead to job creation.
Yeah.
And here in Lagos, we have loads of artisans,
Yeah.
loads of skilled people. And you're saying that, well, for those who are not going to go through, the graduate program, they can as well have a system like technical and vocational education.
Yes, expanding that option and linking it to other areas such as ease of doing business, liaison with industry, right? Creating programs that enable these people become, not just productive, but then employers of labor, right? And we can have this across industries. So entertainment industry is one. And there are a lot of need for a lot of skilled people within the entertainment industry. Tech is another. So industry obviously is another. So clearly this is a platform, right, which we have to develop. Like I said, for Lagos to be sustainable, it is not optional. We must be creating jobs. The society itself must be prosperous. The wealth of the society must be devolved in a broad-based way, right, for it to be sustainable. If we continue on a path where resources keep being concentrated in a few, and the conditions keep getting more difficult for the many, that is a recipe for disaster.
I think I've lost count of the number of times you've used that word resources. Now, you speak of resources. You think Lagos State has enough to actually actualize more than what Lagos is presently experiencing?
Yes, the short answer to your question is yes. And the reason I say that is, you see, this year, for example, Lagos's budget is 1.7 trillion. That's a lot of money. That's the budget of several states combined. Now, you see, resources may never be enough. When you talk about resources being enough, resources may never be enough, right? But if they are not well managed, resources that ought to be enough will not be enough. You see what I mean? If you look at the budget of the current administration, typically what you will find is that of that 1.7 trillion, maybe about 1 trillion is capital projects, right? And the balance is recurrent expenditure. Typically, they will also borrow a significant proportion, maybe 300 to 500 billion out of that, right? Now, they would also argue that they are being prudent because they are spending 1 billion on capital expenditures, and it's good to spend money on capital expenditures. That's the argument. But you have to ask the question, how efficient is the spending of that, or how efficient is that spending? You see the point? Because yes, you may be spending on capital expenditure, but if out of every 10 naira you spend on capital expenditure, you're only getting 2 or 3 naira worth of value, right? And the remaining 7 is finding its way into pockets. Again, this concentration I'm talking about. Over time, you're actually not helping the society. You are making this broader society poorer, right? Even though you may be expending, in budgetary terms, a large amount of money on capital expenditures. So to answer your question, a lot more can be done. And, the G I keep talking about is government reform in our agenda, which we call the Tiger Agenda. The G in it is government reform. And government reform is saying that we need to reform government such that there's much greater accountability, transparency, integrity in the operations of government. This is critical in Lagos State. It's critical anywhere, but especially where you have huge resources like 1.7 trillion going through the system. It is very critical, right? Now, we are saying you need to compensate public sector workers well. We will ensure that everybody who works for Lagos State government gets a reasonable compensation. But once you do that, you must insist that people undertake their responsibilities with integrity. You must monitor and ensure that there's transparency and accountability. If government enters into contracts, those contracts must be the significant contracts. People must know about those contracts. There should be openness and transparency to what government does. People must obey the rules of the public service, which are already there, by the way. We're not creating new rules. Saying that people must not have conflicts of interest. People must not be self-serving, must not be self-dealing, must not be doing businesses with companies that they are the owners of. Right? These rules are all there. We need to ensure that they are enforced. So we will strengthen the Attorney General's office. We will strengthen the tools of surveillance, strengthen the tools of enforcement. We will prosecute diligently. We will insist that people have integrity. We will do the same thing from the top all the way to the bottom. We will lead by example. And we will make examples of people who do not play by the rules. And you will find that when you do this and you do it with diligence and with commitment, as we find in the best run private sector organizations, what will happen, and it's not rocket science, what will happen, and I'm not saying it's easy by saying it's not rocket science, you have to push to get it done, but what will happen is that the actions that will be coming out of government will no longer be self-serving actions, will be actions that are aligned with the interests of the people. And over time, as you do that, as societies have found, and we're not going to be the first to do this, as societies have found, as you go through that process, you begin to see the benefits in every policy area, whether it's education, whether it's health, whether it's transportation, all of these policy areas, because the actions of leadership are now aligned. They are solving for the interests of the people. And where they don't, there are consequences.
You know, before we wrap up, I'll also come back so that we can just quickly gloss through the Tiger agenda to see what each acronym means. At least perhaps that can stick when you hear the word Tiger. I'm looking at security, because in all of these, one other key concern of a Lagosian is security. We understand time was when people can actually walk, home, walk from, very late home from 9 clubs because of tourism and, extra activities, legal activities that people do. So the issue of security should also be very paramount to your government that you're working on. So what are those things you think you can bring to Lagos? Already we know that there is a security committee in Lagos, in present-day Lagos, involving private sectors and individuals helping to, get resources to help the state. Are there things you would do differently should you get elected? And
I think that's good, and we need to do more of that. We need to, co-opt the private sector to the extent that we can. But we also need to use the tools of surveillance, the tools of technology that support security in modern megacities. So, whether those are control rooms, whether there's the use of cameras, CCTVs, those kinds of things. Communication equipment to ensure that we have a security infrastructure, right? That enables rapid communication, enables intelligence. Right, and intelligence is a part of security. Right, in fact, it's almost like prevention being better than cure. Intelligence is important and should be funded. I think it's also important to ensure that security agencies and security operatives and personnel who are deployed within Lagos State, I think the government has a responsibility to ensure that those people, right, the welfare of those people. Because if you don't ensure the welfare of those people, they become the security risk in your society. Because these people have arms, right? If they are not, if their welfare is not seen to, which often it is not, right? They become part of the problem. And so that is a central part of how we will look at it. It's not different from what we talk about in the government reform area, except that these are security personnel. And we must ensure that we have a program for doing that. If security personnel are deployed in Lagos State, we will not make them a risk to our people in Lagos State by not taking care of them.
You know, in all of this, let's speak of leakages. It might be tied to the economy. We've had, you know, for instance, you spoke of transportation, monies that are collected from the drivers don't make it to the coffers of the state. Monies collected from some section of our markets and stores and kiosks ultimately don't also make it to the coffers of the government. These are leakages. And, well, that is why some will say you're fighting against some vested interest.
Serious vested interest, yes. And in fact, one of the biggest of those leakages, and I will tell you, is even in the collection of the revenue at the apex, right? Because there's an agency called Alpha Beta Consulting, which is a consulting agency which is employed by the government to oversee the collection of taxes in exchange for keeping a share of those taxes. And we say, why do you need that? It's a private sector entity owned by a small group of people doing work that the Internal Revenue Service of the state should be doing, because we have a whole Internal Revenue Service on the state doing a lot of work. Why do we need this private agency that is shrouded in secrecy doing this questionable work of questionable value and keeping a share of the revenues? And we say what we have said is that when we come to power, we will unwind that arrangement and we will disclose the details of that arrangement to the people so that the people know.
But again, how much of these do the people know? Because sometimes you're fighting for the people. The same people will seem to be comfortable with the status quo.
Well, people, some people know. Others may not know the details, but they know the deprivations that they are facing daily. And I go and talk to people across the local, I told you. Lehman, the issues and the understanding of the people is actually, the terms by which we say it is different. So it's more sophisticated when you're talking to them in Lekki. The language. But at the heart of it, people recognize that the reason why their lives are the way they are is because the leaders that are in seats of authority are not acting in their interest. They are acting in self-interest. Now, what that means for the rich man in Ikoyi may be that he's in 5 hours of traffic when he need not be, that the roads are bad. Those are inconveniences, right? For the man in Ajeromi, it may mean that when his young child has a fever, he can't be comfortable taking that child to the health center, but he must look for a private facility or look for a traditional medical. They understand that the reason why those things exist is bad leadership, right? So we are saying that when you demonstrate good leadership and they begin to see the outcomes of that good leadership, they also will know the difference.
Now, speaking of which, let's close on this before we'll still talk about the acronym. We'll just go back to the acronym. You're fighting against the ruling party. The ruling party at the center and the ruling party in Lagos State. And that same party has its candidate from Lagos State. How realizable is this dream of the ADC under Funsho Doherty to take over Lagos?
That's a good question, Suleiman. See, it is very doable. I repeat, it is very doable. 2023 is going to be very different. This ruling party that we're talking about, the whole votes that brought them to power was less than 1 million. It was 700,000 in 2019. 700,000 people voted for the ruling party in 2019. Less than 1 million to bring them to Alausa. In 2019, there were 6.5 million, roughly, registered voters in Lagos. Now it's more like 8 million registered voters in Lagos. So for every one person who came to vote, 5 people stayed away. For every one person who came, 5 people stayed away in 2019. Now, in 2023, people are shining their eyes. People are saying no. The youth are saying no. People are saying we will come out and we will vote. People are complaining about cost of living every day. People are complaining about agberos every day. And they know that that power to change that thing is in their hands. So this dominance that you think the ruling party has is not dominant. It's a small group of people that keep returning them to power. Because most people are disengaged from the process, but they are no longer disengaged is what I'm saying. So 2023 now is going to be very different. And by the way, they know it and they are panicking.
Well, before you leave, the acronym once more, TIGER Agenda.
Our TIGER Agenda for Lagos, T is for tax reform to support equity, prosperity, and growth. I is infrastructure for a modern megacity. G is government reform, which I've spoken extensively about. E is education and health systems that the people trust. R is for rule of law and public order, which is where we address the Agbero problem.
Well, we hope to have you back again on the HQ. Many thanks for speaking with us, Funsho Doherty.
Thank you, Suleiman.
Well, we'll take a moment and we'll come back. I'll give you something to chew on just before we leave. Stay with us. Well, the U.S. consulate once said some 14,000 Nigerians are studying in the United States, which reinforces the fact that Nigerians are the most educated residents of America, with 59% of them aged 25 years and older having at least a bachelor's degree. Now, in second place are South Koreans with 56%, the third, Chinese, 51%, followed by the British, 50%, and Germans, 38%. Only 33 of white American citizens have first degrees, according to Migration Policy Institute tabulation of American Community Survey. That's the data of the U.S. Census Bureau. Now, the people of Nigeria can easily be included among the most intelligent people in the world, now, contrary to the misconception that all Nigerians are criminals. Besides, Nigerian security operatives have apprehended foreigners for criminal offenses before. Let's say the media doesn't amplify these reports. I ask again, are Nigerians smart? No. Not a rhetorical question, but one needs an answer. Looking at Nigeria since its independence, can you prove that Nigerians are intelligent? Well, in finding an answer, remember, smart people build nations and do not run them down. Maybe I don't understand what smart means. Until then, chew on this. I'm Sulaiman. Many thanks for watching.